I would look at it from the perspective of a sales leader and say, what are those things that I have to see? Achievement drive, positive energy, coachability. And then how do I appreciate where those differences are? I, for one, do not think that sales leaders ought to be trying to find and hire only the people that are, quote, like them.
I want to welcome you to my sales podcast, where we have one focus and one focus only. That is helping you, the sales community, and sales leaders create more conversations with more qualified buyers, ultimately leading to improving your sales productivity and closing more deals. Each show, you will hear from sales leaders, practitioners, and influencers to help you find, engage, and connect with more buyers. I'm Mario Martinez Jr., and you're now listening to the Selling with Social Sales Podcast. This episode is brought to you by Gong.io, the #1 conversion intelligence platform for sales. Gong helps you achieve revenue success, which means you win more deals, skyrocket rep performance, and gain critical market intelligence. Get powerful visibility into your customer conversations with Gong. Head over to Gong.io to get started. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this episode of Selling with Social. I could not be more excited to have the amazing, my friend, Mr. Jeff Shore. Jeff, welcome to the show, buddy.
Thanks, Mario. Glad to be here. This is going to be fun. A couple of NorCals getting together here.
Yeah, and the funny part about this is the fact that we live not too far away from each other. We went to the same college, St. Mary's, and after I'm 120 episodes, I haven't had you on the show yet, and they finally, a couple years into it, got you on the show, man.
Yeah, there you go. So since we both went to St. Mary's, I still haven't figured it out. I don't know what a Gale is. Yeah, our mascot is the Gales. I'm still not sure what a Gale is. I don't know. I never quite figured that out.
I always had a problem spelling Gale, but
right, exactly.
How do you spell Gale? All right, it's G-A-E. But nonetheless, I don't know what it is either, to be honest with you. So that's a great question. I love it. Well, listen, before we get into this, many people actually might know you, and those that do not, I'd love for you to give just a little bit of background about yourself. But 20 years into doing sales training and consulting with Shore Consulting, which is your business. But I think the key thing for you, man, is something that I don't know if you know this, but I want to be like you.
Be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, right. Let me tell you why. You're at 7 books published, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, you're working on the 8th. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
And you realize that I still haven't even got my first one out. I want to be like Jeff Shore.
Yeah, no, it's easy. Yeah, no. You just call up a literary agent and they sign you up and they sell your book. No problem whatsoever.
Piece of cake, right? Piece of cake. Well, it's actually funny, Jeff. This is a real story here. And, when I first started out in the business, I reached out to a number of different sales influencers, and everybody told me, you got to write a book. If you want to, you want to hit the top of the charts, you got to write a book. And I don't know about you, but anytime someone ever tells me, especially if it's a consistent theme, right? In this case, it was a very consistent theme. If anytime someone says to me, you got to do this in order to be able to get here, I always want to prove that person wrong and take a different path to get where I want to go. So I decided I'm going to do videos and podcasts. Yeah. And fortunately, it worked out for me so far. So
Well, and interestingly enough, that does give you the fast pass, though, to be able to get a book published. I mean, anybody can self-publish a book, and I've self-published books, and that's great. That's a great path to go. But when it comes to getting it published by a publisher, what they want to know is, how big is your audience? Yeah. So if you create the videos and do the podcast, and you can prove that you've got a good, strong following, that's what the publisher wants to know. They want to know who's going to buy your book. And so there is something to be said about getting that platform in place as a launch pad to the book.
Yeah, fair enough. That's a great point. And fortunate for us, we've done a really great job in terms of getting our branding and awareness out. But enough about us. Let's talk a little bit about you. So do me a favor. Talk a little bit about your background so people know who the great Jeff Shore is and why I'm so excited to have the mastermind here on the show with me.
I'm just a normal guy who just is passionately in love with the field of sales. I love sales. I just find it so interesting just pulling apart a sale and looking at the guts and trying to figure out how it all pieces together. And over the years, that's really led me on a journey of understanding more and more about not so much the way that we sell as so much as the way that people buy. And my take is that if we really understand the way somebody wants to buy, it helps us to reverse engineer the sales presentation. So that's really my thing, is understanding what's going on in the mind of somebody who's thinking about making a purchase decision. I started off in sales about 30 years ago when I had my first sales job. It was in real estate, was in sales leadership, eventually national sales director for a very, very large home builder. And then 20 years ago, I hung up the shingle and went on my own, and it's been just great. We've got 12 people in the Shore Consulting family. We do keynotes and client training and consulting. We put on events. We have our Mastermind Group. It is just so much fun. I work with great people. I love the subject matter. I'm one of the few people whose life is as good as I claim it is on Facebook.
I love that. That's excellent. I love that. Now here's what I want to know from you. Everybody
Sure.
knows I asked this question. Tell us something that nobody would know about you, even if they had looked at all your social profiles.
That's a tough one. My life is an open book, but I think most people don't know that I am a hockey playing pastor. So I'm on the unpaid pastoral staff at my church, very passionate about, love it very, very much. I also play hockey, ice hockey. I picked it up about 5 years ago. I didn't know how to skate, but I've been a hockey fan all of my life. And now I'm playing on two different hockey teams, and I'm the captain of the Assassins, which is ironic because we're called the Assassins and we don't know how to shoot. Go figure. So there it is, hockey playing pastor.
I'll give you an amen to that one.
There you go. Yeah.
That's the hockey playing pastor. I love it. Let's get into some meat. One of the things that you talk about, and we were talking about this in our pregame, if you would, having just finished a book on the subject about the follow-up. But the follow-up is a really key component of selling and sales. And I could not disagree with you. In fact, this is an area that is a global sales problem. But I want to narrow this in because you have some very interesting thoughts about specifically leaders and what should leaders or do leaders, what can they do in the follow-up that you and I can learn from and all of the listeners can learn from as well?
Yeah. Look, I think it starts with a fundamental question about sales leaders and what sales leaders are supposed to do. And I'm not quite sure that we've got this right industry-wide when we look at the sales business. We want our sales leaders to be analytical, and they got to fill out sales projections, and they got to do the data and the analysis and all the logic, all the very left brain stuff. We also want them to be outgoing and gregarious and inspirational and motivating to their salespeople. We're really asking sales leaders to do a lot of different things. And this is problematic because you can't do everything well. And when you're trying to make everything a priority, then what really should be a priority sort of gets left behind. I am really concerned about how scattered sales leaders are with the breadth of responsibilities that take them away from the things that are going to matter most. I certainly have my opinions on things that matter most, but I'm wondering what your take is on that, Mario, whether you share that concern about how scattered sales leaders are.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I sat in the seat myself. My last stop before going on my own was a VP of sales, and at least 60% of my time was spent on admin-related work, right?
Yeah.
And the thing that killed me the most was, we get our territory, you have the territory alignments, and then you get a list of 100,000 records from sales operations enablement. And they say, take a look at this and tell me which accounts do you want to keep? And you're like, you got to be freaking kidding me. Like, don't just dump the data from the CRM. Give me the analytics that tells me what are the accounts that I should be thinking about keeping, as opposed to a 200,000 Excel spreadsheet. And I'm over-exaggerating the number of 200,000, but anything over a couple hundred is too much. Like your brain goes nuts.
No, absolutely. In my work with sales leaders over the years, and this is a question that I renew on a regular basis, where do you spend time? And the top three things that we see as far as where to get spent: problem solving, admin, and meetings, right? And so when you look at your typical sales leader, if you look at just putting out fires and meetings. You just described easily 80% of the time invested for most sales leaders. So if you look and you say, okay, here's the sales leader, and we want to establish their priorities. We believe that their priorities are problem solving, admin, and meetings. If that's what you set up, well, okay, I guess you're doing it right. But I think we all know that there's far more value that sales leaders could give. Priorities were established properly and their jobs were structured to allow them to do that. And to my mind, sales should be thinking about one thing above everything else. And in two words, that is lead conversion. Sales leaders have to have the time, attention, focus, and expertise on how do we take an existing lead and move it across the finish line? How do I work hand in hand with my frontline salesperson to make sure that they are enabled, they are equipped, that they are proficient, and that they're doing everything they can to get everything out of every lead? That lead conversion focus should be the focus for sales leaders. It's a rarity when I see that happen.
I agree with you. And generally speaking, a sales leader has been promoted up through the ranks and oftentimes have that tenure, oftentimes have that experience, oftentimes understand the buying signals or the challenges, right. Or quite frankly, you just put two people together as partners to co-sell as a team selling environment, and two minds generally are better than one, right? And yep. You're absolutely right. That challenge exists today, that our sales leaders don't have enough time to be able to engage with the sales team.
It's really true. Look, I pin it on some sales leaders who sometimes look at it and go, you know what, I'm very, very busy and therefore I'm effective. So they are not looking at the right things. But I think this is more often an organizational problem. They load too much stuff onto the sales leader because the organization itself doesn't understand that lead conversion takes time. Because along with lead conversion, there's a sister to lead conversion. It's called skill development. It's not just that I'm watching to see that every lead is going as far as it can go. It's a question of helping the salesperson to develop their skills, both for follow-up and for the next person who they're going to talk to. So that lead conversion and skill development, those coaching aspects should dominate the week of the sales leaders, but oftentimes they fall into the category of, if I have time. And we all know what happens here. They never have time.
So how do you fix it?
It's got to be fixed from the top of the organization, right? So when we're working with an organization, we will not, if we've got a long-term sales training opportunity, for example, with a company, we will never work with only the salespeople. We just sort of refuse to do that. If we can't be involved in the senior leadership of the organization, then we know that it's not going to go where we want it to go. So there's got to be that top-down look. But there's also the empowering of the sales leader who sometimes has to go head-to-head with their boss, even if it's the owner of the company, to say, if you want me to go out and get you sales, guess what? They're not sitting in the meetings that you're making me go to, and that has nothing to do with the paperwork that's sitting on my desk. If you want me to do meetings, paperwork, that's fine. But if you want me to get sales, they're not here. They're out there, and you got to give me the time to be able to do it.
Without a doubt, I totally agree with you as respects to you got to get the executive leader buy-in. For example, when we launch our training programs, the exact same thing. We are not just meeting with the program sponsors, we're meeting with the senior executives, and we're talking about the chief revenue officer or the highest level sales ranking officer that is responsible for this particular segment or division that we're working with. They've got to buy in on mindset and change and pushing something down the pipe, as opposed to not pushing it, right? To be able to get full behavioral change. So I'm with you on that. Right. The problem that exists, and I'm curious about this, and I'm kind of diverting here along a path, but the problem is, and if I look at even our own chief sales officer, I absolutely want him to be frontline with the sales team doing these calls and building strategies behind that. There's no doubt. But then we have, well, how do we deal with motivating, which is compensation? Well, how do you deal with the infrastructure problem, which is, creating the playbooks and the messaging so you can get more prospects? Well, making sure that you actually solve for, the lead routing and those types of things. So are we saying then that somehow, some way, especially in the smaller business environment or even in the large environment, we've got to have the right people in these areas managing these things for the sales leader, and the sales leader is providing 40,000 foot strategy, and then there's execution on somebody else's plate. Is that what you're saying as well?
Yeah, I agree that sometimes this job is too full. It needs to be carved up to be able to say, this person is going to handle all of the long-term and the day-to-day, and this person is going to go coach. When we look at it, we think sales leader, sales executive, we put so many things under that one title, and somehow we have to break out the idea that sales coach who's going to coach on two things, lead conversion and skill development. That is their job, and they should be doing that 80% of the time. So if we have to carve up that job and give some of the responsibilities elsewhere, so be it. But who is out there making the new sales happen? And so often it's just the salesperson by herself, by himself, without that support. And they look and they go, well, what are you going to do? My manager's busy. But that's an organizational structure problem more than anything else.
Yeah, good point. So let's pretend that we fix this organizational alignment problem, that we fix this admin problem, which we know is a broken issue in most sales organizations. How then do you create better leaders to train salespeople, to coach salespeople, to bring them to the point where you don't have to be on every sales meeting? They can go off and do it on their own, and they're like clockwork closing deals. How do you create better leaders? And I think I'm thinking you've got a whole mastermind group around this. I think it's called the Roundtable, right?
Yeah, that's right. So I take a select number of sales leaders and work with them throughout the course, very intensely, the course of a year. They're from all over North America, but we meet once a quarter in a different city around the country, and then we talk every week. And the idea here is to take 4 pillars of sales leadership and break it down. Because what we find here, it's one thing, and I think this is where your question was going, Mario. It's one thing to have the structure in place if we can get it to that level, but then what do you do? Because I don't think most sales leaders who were probably promoted from the sales force into a sales leadership position, nobody ever worked with them to say, this is what a good coach is. This is what an effective coach does. So then what happens is if we do have any coaching time, I'm going to talk to my salesperson. So what do you got working this week?
What's
That's
closing?
Not coaching. Yeah. What's closing? Exactly. That's just an early peek at the sales report. That's all that is. But there's not that dig in and say, let's do this. Let's figure out how we can move this along. And let's talk about what you're saying and how you're saying it and how we can make you better. So that very word coach has to be seen in a very literal way. We've got to look at it, the idea of, if you think about a music coach or an athletic coach, what are they doing? Dan Coyle, he wrote the book, The Talent Code. And when he thinks about what great coaching looks like, it's not about the inspirational speeches, and it's certainly not about barking out orders from behind a desk somewhere. It's about these small, incremental, but very important moments in the process, whether it's the process of lead conversion or it's in the dialogue of a conversation, but the coach is working together very, very closely. And when you think about that from the analogy of music or athletics or anything else, I'm just thinking about my speaking coach. I don't sit there and go, hey, Mark, come on, do you know who I am? You can't tell me what to do. No, I'm paying you to tell me what you can do. And if you can't find something that I can improve on, then I really shouldn't be paying you in the first place. That's the relationship we need to get to. That's the type of camaraderie and drive towards the end goal that is so often lacking.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. So you mentioned 4 pillars of sales leadership. What are those 4 pillars?
This is a debatable subject for sure. But for me, when I'm looking at it, the mastermind group that I work on, we meet on once a quarter. So I said, okay, well, what are we going to focus on each of those 4 quarters? Okay. So the first quarter, we work on lead conversion. It's all about lead conversion coaching. How do you get in and help a salesperson move a deal along? The second quarter, we focus on skill development coaching. What are we going to do here to help your salespeople? How are you going to get in? Do it again. Thank you. Do it again. Here's the coach. Here's the little incremental. So the second quarter is all about skill development. The third quarter is all about team building, recruiting, onboarding, hiring, training. How do you make sure that you've got the right people in place, that you're surrounding yourself with the right people, and that you're assessing them the right ways, both at the time of hiring and then on an ongoing level. And then the fourth quarter is all about the business management side and the long-term planning. How do you forecast? How do you get into the grittier stuff? So we break that down into those 4, but those 4 are sequential. Lead conversion comes first, then sales coaching, then how do you make sure you got the right team in place, and everything else sort of falls in place after that.
I love that. And I think that's one of the challenges too, is I remember when I was in corporate and I first became a sales manager, I was assigned what we call I forget what we called them, but anyways, the corporate coaches that coaches the sales managers, right? And we get on these calls and they'd say, okay, so how's everything going? And you'd be like, well, this is how it's going. This is what's going on. Okay, well, what problems are you running into? And you're like, well, this is some of the things I was thinking about. There's some of the challenges. And then you'd go down one path. Well, this is how you coach that individual. Well, this is how you fix this problem. Well, this is how you address. And it was always all over the place. And I think that's one of the challenges when someone starts coaching the coach. That very first question, how are things going? No, the way that we coach, and I love what you just said, is we need to think about the very first thing that's the most important role and function of a sales leader is how are you going to help close more deals, right? Lead conversion. Yeah. That's what you call it. I've said this 1,000 times on my own sales podcast, on sales podcasts that I've joined. If your title says something sales, VP of sales, chief sales officer, director of sales, sales manager, guess what? You're in selling, go close something. Forget close, go find an opportunity, right, for the sales team. Do something. And I love how you start out with lead conversion, then into skills development on how to be an effective coach, and then team building, hiring, recruiting. I would call that like motivating the team as well as attracting the right talent. And finally,
what do your sales rallies look like? And
then finally, that business management component. So this is not a pitch of any sort for people to join the program, but if I'm having a problem in any one of these 4 areas, I would absolutely encourage my listeners to think about, what do I need to do to improve? And maybe reach out to my boy, Jeff Shore. But I want to talk a little bit about, you've really started to help a sales leader coach. And one of the things that we see often is leaders tend to be generally competitive, and they're also highly driven individuals. That's probably how they got to that position in the first place. And oftentimes, one of the pitfalls that we see with that is that they don't know how to manage those that don't necessarily have the same exact qualities. And so I think that becomes a challenge. So I want to first get the answer to the question of, do you find that to be true, that leaders tend to be competitive and driven individuals? And if so, then what are the pitfalls of leading others who don't have those same qualities? And before you answer, we're going to listen to this message from our program sponsor. Opinions in sales are your worst enemy. Here's why. Your business has million-dollar questions that if you could answer with facts, you'd have an unfair advantage. Those questions are, what really separates your best reps from the rest? Why does half of your pipeline slip? And what's the best message to go to market with? If your answers were facts instead of opinions, you'd win the unfair share of your market. It turns out the truth is buried right underneath your nose. It's found in the customer conversations your team has every day. Introducing Gong.io. Gain powerful visibility into your customer conversations. With Gong, you'll win more deals, skyrocket rep success, and gain critical market intelligence that will help you achieve revenue success and win the lion's share of the wealth. Go to gong.io/demo to get started today. All right before that message from our program sponsor, Gong.io, I asked you a question. Let me repeat it. Leaders tend to be competitive, driven individuals. Do you find that to be true?
If they're not, I don't want them as a leader. I think that a leader's achievement drive is absolutely critical, because what happens? The characteristics of leaders are adopted by the followers, right? I don't remember who once said, show me a leader without a follower, and I'll show you a guy out on a walk. If you're going to leader, you got to have followers. And followers tend to gravitate towards those things that are most important to the leader. So if that sales leader doesn't show that profound achievement drive, I shouldn't expect that my salespeople are going to follow. So I agree 100% that achievement drive is critical to the effectiveness in a sales leadership role.
Okay. So now that we established that, and I agree with you as well. I mean, that's even my own nature as well. So talk about some of the pitfalls then of leading others who don't necessarily have those same qualities, because I think there are some salespeople who are internally assertive and aggressive and competitive, and that nobody likes to lose, right? They want to win. But I've seen many people who don't have the same drive. Like, I've managed people myself that don't have the exact same drive that I have, the hyper competitive environment to want to win, right? But yet they're super successful. So talk a little bit about that, especially when we think about this line of skill development for coaching.
Look, I would say that achievement drive might manifest differently to different salespeople. It might look different, but I think at its core, that achievement drive is either there or it's not. But you show me somebody who's really effective and they've got an achievement. Now, it might not be pom-poms and jumping up in the air, but they still have to win. So I would look at it from the perspective of a sales leader and say, what are those things that I have to see? Achievement drive, positive energy, coachability. And then how do I appreciate where those differences are? I, for one, do not think that sales leaders ought to be trying to find and hire only the people that are, quote, like them. You can really get into a trap there, right? You're hiring not just an individual, you're hiring for a team and a team dynamic. And you want to be able to bring people on who have different things to be able to contribute. But I happen to think that achievement drive is, for me, let me put it this way. I wouldn't hire a salesperson that could not demonstrate achievement drive. I just wouldn't do it because it's just too important to their overall success.
And so do you think that demonstration of achievement drive that you're talking about is the demonstration of that is through their results? How does a sales leader look for somebody with the achievement drive if it's not results?
Yeah. Well, certainly past behavior we know is the surest predictor of future behavior, no doubt about that. But I can also, even in that interview process, I can give the salespeople some assignments, the candidates some assignment. Hey, you know what? I want you to go do a little online research and then write me just one page about how we stack up to the competition. Just curious what your thoughts are. And I'm going to learn right from the very beginning. If I have a sales candidate who says, do you know who I am? I'm not going to do, well, right from the very beginning, like, yeah, I know who you are, not my employee, right? If you're not willing, what I want is somebody who's going to do it in an hour and bring it to me in a little glossy folder and say, you know, here you go. This is what I came up with. So I think there are ways to measure achievement drive, and there are assessments that can help us do that as well. Because it doesn't always, the person who's coming, hey, how you doing, Mario? I'm Frank. It doesn't mean they have high achievement drive. It might just mean that they have high slickness.
Gotcha. You know, it's funny because one of the things that I do in the interview process when we're looking at sales folks, and now I've even done this in our customer success organization, because within Vingresso, Kurt Shaver is our chief sales officer, and I lead our customer operations organization. And so for new people that we brought on board, I've actually, to your point, part of the interview process is you're going to go through a 30-minute presentation. You're going to bring in 3 slides and 3 slides only. I give them, here's the instructions. It's part of the interview process. I want you to present. You're going to present to a group and a committee. They're going to evaluate you. And here are the 3 things I'm looking for on 3 different slides. And that's what I say, 3 things, 3 different slides. And what I'm hoping is that they can listen. Right? They're not going to come in with 10 slides. They're going to hear what it is that I said, because this is what we would do as a buyer and as a salesperson, right? We got to listen to what the customer says. 3 things and 3 things on 3 slides is what I'd say. Why you? Why the company? And tell me your why, right? Mm-hmm. I want to know about your personal why. What motivates you? So why you as an individual? Why the company? And tell me your personal why. Those are the 3 things that I usually have people do. Tell me, give me feedback. Yeah. What do you think? Is that good, bad? I mean, should we be asking different questions?
First of all, it's great, but I think that sits on an important foundation. And that is that if you were going to hire somebody, you have to know what you are looking for in the first place. If you don't do that, you're probably going to get tricked. You're going to get fooled. So what typically tends to happen for sales leaders is that in the same week, somebody quits unexpectedly and somebody else does something so galactically stupid that even they know they have to be fired. Now you're down 2 salespeople that you weren't expecting. What do? You roll back your chair, you open your credenza, you pull out a stack of resumes full of people that nobody else is going to hire, and you start looking for the prettiest pig at the fair. Because at that point, what do you have? You got a stack of resumes, that's your entire universe. The other way to do that is to look at it and say, what is the avatar of a great salesperson? What are the attributes that I'm looking for? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to compare the resume in front of me, not to all the other resumes. I'm going to compare it to my avatar and see how they stack up. And then I'm going to test them on the things that make up the avatar. So again, for me, it's achievement drive, positive energy, coachability. These are the first 3 things that I look for. That doesn't make me right. There are a lot of different ways to look at this, but I think you need to come up with your own. For me, it's achievement drive, positive energy, coachability. What you just did is to say, I want you to come in, you're going to be prepared. Here's what you've got. You've got 3 slides. These are the 3 whys that you're going to do. You're going to find out, do they have enough achievement drive to want to do that, prepare for it, and to really nail that down? Do they have the positive energy that's going to come across in their presentation? And do they follow your instructions? Therefore, are they coachable? You just nailed what would be, to me, my top 3. So congratulations, you have a convert.
So given the pastor that you are, I'm going to give myself an amen to that one.
Love it.
this is a big challenge when you talk about the recruiting aspect of our jobs as leaders, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of sales leaders, we think we know what we're looking for, but who really should be defining what that avatar looks like? Should that be human resources? Is that sales enablement? Who would I go back to say, as a sales leader, we've got sales leaders listening in right now, and they're listening, they're saying, well, this is a great idea. Yeah, you're right. We got achievement drive, we've got coachability, and we've got positive energy. That's what I'm looking for. How do I figure that out? Well, use the 3-slide presentation that I just mentioned, 30 minutes, right?
Yeah.
But overall, what am I looking for, and who should be telling me this? Is whose responsibility is that?
Yeah, and I would argue everyone's, including your existing salespeople. This is a cultural question that you're asking here, a very important question, by the way, but this is a cultural question. This should not be defined by one person. This should be woven into the fabric of the organization, and everyone has to agree from the senior level in the organization on down. We've got to be able to look at it and say, this is what we're looking at. If we don't do that, then what's going to happen? We're going to get fooled. Remember, we're interviewing salespeople, and this is a sales presentation. You don't think that they can come up with just the right answers. It's not necessarily going to give you the proof of what you're looking for. I'll give you a perfect example. In most sales organizations, to me, experience is the single most overrated attribute of a candidate. Now, I get it, might make the onboarding a little easier, and maybe we'll be able to pick up some of their knowledge from previous experiences. But I would say you're also picking up all of their bad habits. You're picking up the culture of the company that they used to work for. So if you are going to hire somebody with experience, you better pay very close attention to what that experience is. What I have found is that if you've got 2 years of experience in sales, you will be employable for the rest of your career, even if it means bouncing from one organization to another, getting hired by a lazy manager who puts experience absolutely at the top of the list. If I can get the good experience in the package of achievement drive, coachability, and positive energy, I'll take it. But otherwise, this falls way down the list for me.
And that is the experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that because you believe, which I think I know where you're going to go with this, but you believe that if coachability is there and you are a successful sales leader, you can coach that person to where you want them to get to? That's
right. Again, this goes back to our earlier conversation. Your job has to be structured to allow you that time to be able to coach.
Exactly.
But if we've got that, if we've got the systems in place to bring people in who don't have the experience, Mario, you and I have both seen it. That salesperson who comes in who is too stupid to know what they can't sell, so they just sell anyway. And then the veterans were like, well, wait till we get a hold of him. We'll show him a thing or two. But what happens? That energy is so strong, they come in and they just light the place on fire. I'm a big fan of finding the right core talent and then teaching them how to do the job.
This goes back to something that I struggled with personally when I was many years ago looking to move from where I was. I started out in software sales, then I moved into consulting, and then I moved into selling infrastructure as a service, and then I moved into telecommunications. That was a very long piece of my history, my sales career. And when I was there in telecom for 10 years, to try to get out of that, to try to get out of telecom, it was almost next to freaking impossible, because even though at that organization, I was with a startup company that they had funded about $1 billion of funding that they gave. And then they closed that business unit down. They merged me into the mothership. So I was there about 14 years. Out of those 14 years, only 2 of those years did I ever not end up in 100% or President's Club, right? So when I decided, I want to get back into software, and I started talking to the big, giant software companies here locally in the Bay Area, none of them would hire me on board at the leadership level. They all wanted me to start out and earn my stripes down below, because I hadn't proven myself in software for so many years. And it bothered me so much that when I talk to leaders who are so focused on, when we hire somebody, they got to have the industry experience. Like, we need to have those people with the industry experience. And something about that, Jeff, it just bugs the crap out of me. And what it bugs the crap out of me is I don't care if you were the best-selling solar sales guy. If you were the top-selling solar sales guy and you want to move into software, do you have the achievement drive, the positive energy, the coachability? Because in 90 days, I, as a coach, and you who's coachable, right, I can teach you all the acronyms of the industry that you need to know.
That's right.
The thing is can you work with buyers? And that is a big issue. I think a lot of sales leaders, we try to hire because we want those people from within the industry, from security industry, from the digital this, from that particular. And it's like, why? Right. Go hire the best person you can find in another industry that has all of the skill sets and has amazing sales track record. Bring that person in, and 60 to 90 days, you will inculcate them into the mindset of all the acronyms that they need to know for the industry.
Yeah. I'm thinking back to one of the best salespeople I ever knew in my lifetime. And she was a teacher, and she had a side hustle leasing apartments on the weekend just to try and make ends meet. And she was clearly in the wrong line of work, and she knew it, right? She had in college, like, I got to pick a major. I'm going to pick education. The next thing you know, she's a teacher, and she just hated it. She hated it. But I remember she called me one day, and I wasn't hiring. And we had about a 5% turnover on our staff. So I never interviewed people unless they were referred anyway. But she got through to me, and in a 5-minute conversation convinced me to have breakfast with her. And I remember driving to breakfast with like, what if I hate this person? I have to sit here and eat a whole meal with her. And I don't think I was 30 seconds into that meal before, not only that I knew I was going to hire her, but I knew she was going to be the best salesperson that I would have ever met. She had never sold anything in her life, and she was phenomenal. She was incredible. And why? One of the most positive energy people I have ever met, as high achievement drive as you will ever see. And she would just stand there and say, come on, Jeff, teach me something. What's next? She had the big three going for her, and she was a superstar. And man, did she make me look good. All at a time when I was, quote, not hiring. This is another huge issue that sales managers have. They only hire when they've got an opening. Big, big mistake. The worst hires we will ever make are when we have the greatest need. The best hires we will ever make are when we don't have an opening.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you're not under the gun, you don't have the pressure, and you have the ability to really think through who is the right person and how do I build that pipeline. Pipeline recruiting is a fundamental, huge component of a sales leader at any level, right? From VP all the way down. It's make sure you're always
no doubt.
Love this conversation, man. And a couple questions for you. If people want to get a hold of you, they want to connect with you, what's the best way? Is it on Twitter? Is it LinkedIn? What's the best way to connect with you?
You can go to all of those things. The starting point is probably jeffshore.com, where you can get everywhere you need to go, whether you want information on our programs or how to link up to us on social, keynote speeches, whatever it is, or to buy a book. It's all at jeffshore.com.
I love it. And the question I have for you is all around your all-time favorite movie. What is it?
You know, there are just so many. It's very, very hard to choose, but I am going to go with The Shawshank Redemption.
Shawshank Redemption. We've had that a couple times before. I think it's a theme amongst sales leaders.
But what's really weird is that for some reason, my second favorite movie is probably The Green Mile. So I got a prison thing going on. I don't know what it is.
I love it, man. Man, this has been an awesome conversation. And for all of you listening in right now, make sure you connect up with my boy, Jeff Shore at jeffshore.com. It'll be in the show notes. And for all of you here right now listening, and don't push that button, listen to this very important message right now from our program sponsor. Take care. Sales managers, before you go, does it feel like everything is a priority and everyone is asking for your time and attention? Here's a free video training that will help you manage your time, double your income, and will skyrocket your team's success. It's called the Sales Management Matrix. You'll learn exactly how to spend your time for the highest revenue return possible. Go to gong.io/matrix to get the free 19-minute video training. Again, that's gong.io/matrix. Go there now, and we'll see you on the next episode. Hey, thanks for listening to the Selling with Social Sales podcast. Did you enjoy that show? If so, would you do me a huge favor and give the Selling with Social podcast a rating and review on iTunes? That would be super awesome. Also, if you want to easily find our show, just go to vengreso.com. That's VENGRESO.com and click on podcast. From there, you'll find the Selling with Social podcast. Thanks for listening in. And until the next show, be awesome. Mario Martinez Jr.